So that is why an apple a day keeps the... Oh my gosh, he almost hurt my family. He almost hurt my family. I know he was creeping up the past few weeks, but I thought this was all about stress relief. You know what? I think he's just doing his job. Thank you. Okay, if I say I love Mondays at the end, I'm doing this a lot. I'm not stressed. It's actually just a fun toy. Underrated. I don't think he's a cynical spy. I don't think TRK is a cynical spy. I think the world is in a better and safer place right now. This is the closure we're looking for. I think he means well. You know what? I'm put him back. Well deserved. He's part of the family. Thank you, Ted. So, first off, happy 30th anniversary to Rayman. The song you're listening to right now is the menu music in Rayman 2. And Rayman 2 was the first Rayman game I ever played. I remember the green N64 cartridge just blew my mind. It was really cool when they did that. It didn't happen often. Donkey Kong 64 was yellow. There was a Power Rangers game I never played that was black. So it was just cool to have different colored like N64 cartridges. Pokemon Stadium 2 was gold and silver. Majora's Mask was gold. I love stuff like that. It's very similar to the Pokemon games where they would have like different colored cartridges and stuff, which that kind of costs a little bit more money, but I appreciate them kind of going out of their way to do that. It's just cool. And Rayman 2 definitely pushed a cool like aesthetic, not just with the cartridge but the atmosphere, the sound design, the music. What a beloved character. I'm surprised he hasn't been in Super Smash Brothers since Smash 4. Smash 4 is when they introduced more third-party characters outside of Sonic and Snake. So I think by the time of Smash 4, I was kind of surprised that he wasn't in. It doesn't ruin Smash 4 or Ultimate, but I think by the next game, he definitely should be in. So props to him. I think he should have been in since Smash 4, but it doesn't obviously ruin those games. And it's looking like Ubisoft is going to celebrate this year, which is really cool. And I hope he gets a few games this decade. That would be awesome. The Rabbids Mario DLC with him was awesome. And the music alone's incredible. I recently, a while back, I played Rayman Legends on the Switch, which I want to finish on stream. There's a lot of games that I've realized that there's a lot of games I've wanted to finish growing up, and I'm like, oh, I already do variety games, and Rayman Legends is up there. I remember my mom watching me play a few years ago, and she was so impressed by how much detail was put into that game alone. It's true, it's a love letter to Rayman. I think just platformers in general. So when people tell me it's one of the best platformers ever made, yeah, easy agreement there. Speaking of, though, Rayman is an interesting case because this is a beloved classic character to where his form of nostalgia is often praised when he comes back. I've noticed this kind of like negative snowball with the term nostalgia, and I think it often is associated with corporate cynicism and the term nostalgia bait. Specifically in Star Wars, which, I've talked about a decent amount in the past. I love Star Wars. I've been a fan since I was born. My parents were fans, before I was born. And it's so fascinating that when I watch, like, The Mandalorian, and to this day, my favorite Star Wars live-action episode is that Boba Fett Returns one. My favorite, cartoon episode is the General Grievous debut in the 2003 series, but live action is definitely when Boba Fett came back. And awesome, killer episode. And it's crazy that in that season with him and Ahsoka and Luke Skywalker, all those characters were in character. They were written well. They helped with the story, and it helped with the overall, that feeling of this is Star Wars. So when I heard that there were people mad about those characters popping up saying, oh, Mandalorian is a nostalgia bait cameo fest, that's when I really started to realize that these terms are being, I think, overused. Because in this case, I think the artist's intent, which is Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, is really good. The artistic intent was introduce Ahsoka. She's, you know, an ex-Jedi that knows the ways of the Jedi, and she can help Grogu. Bam, that helps a lot with the narrative. It's also cool to see her interact with other characters like Luke in the next season in the Boba Fett series, and then obviously, you know, with the Mandalorian, they bring in Boba Fett, which that just, you know, that's like, you're almost surprised Boba Fett wasn't in season 1, but it was good build-up because Boba Fett is the Mandalorian. You know, when Star Wars was created, he's the OG, right? And so it makes sense to have him show up in a show named after what he started. And they did a lot of good homework with, they bring up Jango Fett's master that was covered in like expanded universe stuff. I loved it. I love that episode so much. It's just a good show overall. Then they brought in Luke Skywalker, and huge reveal, as he's cutting down Dark Troopers, which Dark Troopers are from the Star Wars Jedi Knight games. I've been, you know, streaming those lately. Even though I've played a lot of Jedi Outcast before, I'm doing a full playthrough right now, and just the amount of love put into Star Wars from that series alone is incredible. I love finding things I didn't know about before, and I played, you know, the previous games for the first time a few years ago, like Dark Forces, and Dark Forces 2, and Dark Forces 2 I beat this year, and I loved seeing the Dark Troopers in the first Dark Forces game, and again, all these callbacks, and that's the thing, is that these, quote, what people would call nostalgia bait now, I think is just creators loving the series. It's creators understanding that this is a universe. People love these characters. So if you're careful and you implement these characters well, you know, artistically, it's seamless. And so when I hear people say, oh, the Luke Skywalker cutting down Dark Troopers thing was nostalgia pandering, you know, I don't think so. I think Luke served such an impactful part of that narrative. The Dark Troopers, were an awesome video game callback, and they served their character purpose well in that show as pretty threatening, you know, henchmen to Moff Gideon. And we want to see more of that. You know, as much as people say, oh, here we go, we're going to see Han Solo and Chewbacca again, it's nostalgia pandering, it comes down to the intent. I do think, unfortunately, the Disney attempted sequel reboots, a lot of their intent was kind of, it came off as cynical nostalgia cash grabbing. That's actually, you know, let's put Han and Chewie in there just for it. You know, we're trying to retell episode 4 with Force Awakens, but unfortunately it feels, yeah, kind of corporate, shallow. They didn't have people like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau giving a lot of in-depth homework. That's what we appreciate. I think that's when nostalgia is done well, when it's researched, you know, homework. It pays off. The recent Zelda game, Echoes of Wisdom, it brings back Deku Scrubs, which are my favorite. It's my favorite. The Deku Royal family are my favorite Zelda characters. The Deku Scrubs in general are my favorite, you know, species in Zelda. And so I don't mind Koroks. It's kind of weird that people got hatred towards Koroks when Deku's left. Nothing on them. Obviously, when Wind Waker came out, I would have loved to see Deku Scrubs in there, but it's okay that they weren't. Do I think they could have came back sooner? They were in like Triforce Heroes, but yeah, I'm kind of surprised it took so long for them to come back. Regardless, it seems like I think other people in the Zelda team also had the same realization, or they had a similar thing. We're like, you know what? I think we've gone way too long without putting Deku Scrubs in games. Not that other Zelda games are bad without them, but anyway, they came back in Echoes of Wisdom, and as a fan, seeing the Deku salesmen have like mustaches, which is specifically from Majora's Mask, and then hearing that their overworld music is a remix of Deku Palace from Majora's Mask, the first game that gave them like a theme, like a theme song, it blew me away. That is artistic detail. If anyone, you know, tries to write that off as quote nostalgia bait, that does not feel shallow and corporate. That feels like a love letter from designers that understand why people love this series, why people like me love Deku Scrubs so much. Their designs are cool overall. I love the Deku Palace theme. The fact, I mean, again, the fact alone that the Deku salesmen have mustaches, while in Ocarina of Time they don't, that means that not only were they studying Deku Scrubs in just one game, they were looking at like the broad like history of Zelda games that include them. That's homework, and that pays off well. These people are, they're paid salary to make games, and I love that on that salary, they're putting a lot of artistic effort into it. It reminds me of Metroid Prime Hunters, where Richard Verodi and the Metroid art designer, Android, Andrew Jones, I mean, they were paid money, good Nintendo money, to make 6 distinct parallels to Samus. And it paid off. I mean, it paid off to where, look at what my username is that I've been using since 2006. And the fact, it comes down to narrative effort and letting your artist, it's a balance of trusting your artists and designers, but also understanding that they respect the material. There are times where, again, there's not as much respect for the material. There might be respect for the dollar signs for when it comes to like Star Wars. And so they're like, oh yeah, put Luke in there, it'll make a bunch of money. But then someone like, again, Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, they'd be like, why is Luke here? Where in the storyline would Luke be right now? Is that something Luke would do? And I appreciate that. I appreciate people going above and beyond for understanding their characters. I think that's another reason why the Captain America movies are so good. That trilogy, First Avenger, Winter Soldier, Civil War, are regarded as not just some of the best superhero movies, but just some of the like best movies in general. When it comes to like aligning up a trilogy, like Star Wars, Captain America is one of the best trilogies, and one of the big factors is Steve Rogers is a static character. He's a good man, just like the moral said in the first movie. And so it's all about what surrounds Steve Rogers and what tests him as a character. And so by the time of Winter Soldier, when the Russo brothers came in, they said in the behind the scenes that they're like, we know we can't change Captain America. He's Captain America, but what can we test of him, right? They put a lot of effort into understanding who he is. And it's cool. It's homework, and it's good homework. And when you bring back, comic book characters like the Winter Soldier or Crossbones, it's not feeling like, oh, nostalgia bait. Oh, here we go. Disney's just trying to make money. It's like, no, they understand who these characters are, and now they're translating them into a movie format. So it's just like, I've noticed that because of Star Wars being the poster boy of this right now, where they bring back characters, there's been an unfortunate damage to just bringing back characters. And so I hope that people realize that when you bring back a character like Darth Maul, it's not about like, oh yeah, make more Darth Maul sales. Oh yeah, we're just doing this because we don't know what to do with Star Wars. No, they knew what to do. They made multiple episodes of Clone Wars with Darth Maul. They added even more to his character and what they elaborated on that we didn't know about. And now, he already was one of the most fan favorite characters with only episode 1 as his debut. And now with all these TV shows about him, he's loved even more just by seeing the praise of it. And that is doing something that is nostalgia as a bonus. Take a cool character and add more to them. Full circle back to Metroid Prime Hunters, Candid, Spire, Weevil, Noxus, Trace, Sylix. I'd love to see more of them. I'm excited for Metroid Prime 4 because we're going to look more into Sylix. I think all the Prime Hunters are going to at least cameo in that game. But you want to talk about potential. You want to talk about something that isn't written off as nostalgia bait or corporate nostalgia. It's well-made characters, well-designed characters that are currently underutilized. It's the equivalent of if people started to say, oh, this new Mario game has Bowser as the villain. Nostalgia pandering. This Super Mario Brothers one final boss. They're doing it again. It's like Bowser keeps showing up because people like Bowser, and designers know how to use Bowser well. So I think, the next time you play a new Pokemon game and you hear a remix of the red, blue, and green gym leader theme, rather than going, oh, this is nostalgia pandering, ask yourself, is this good? Is this getting me hyped up for a fight? Maybe the formula was already there, why waste it? The wheel was already invented, and I love new battle themes, but it is funny when you hear past remixed Pokemon songs or Mario songs, and there's some people that will just hate it because they're bringing back something, quote, nostalgic. But if it's good, it's good. And while that term can be subjective, take a look around and see if a new age of kids are loving these old school designs. I love that I can walk around at the store and I can see kids celebrating Jigglypuff, Squirtle, Bulbasaur, Charmander, Pikachu with all these different forms of merchandise, and it makes you realize that these Pokemon designs since the get-go were awesome. And it's not nostalgia baiting. It's about understanding that people love these characters, the designers cooked and keep cooking with those recipes, and you could add things surrounding that, just like Darth Maul in Star Wars. I love Mondays. Pretty great day, and I hope you do too.